I'm Alex Larson, dietitian, Ironman finisher, and host of Endurance Eats, the podcast where we break down the science of endurance nutrition and turn it into clear, practical nutrition advice to revolutionize how you think about fueling your body. So grab a seat, or keep moving if you're out training, and let's get started. Welcome back to the Endurance Eats podcast. Today was actually inspired by one of you, an ultra runner listener who slid into my DMs on Instagram and asked, can you do an episode on best practices for running with your dog? As someone who's been running with my golden retrievers for years, I gave a resounding yes. Whether you're logging trail miles or pounding the pavement with your four-legged best friend, this conversation is packed with practical advice on how to support your dog's health, performance, and recovery. I'm joined by Dr. Katie Nisek, a small animal veterinarian based in northern Minnesota. Katie works full-time as an emergency vet and spends her winters on the snowy trails as the head veterinarian for the John Bear Grace Sled Dog Marathon. She and her husband live off-grid with their 6 dogs and 2 cats where they enjoy recreational mushing, trail running, and mountain biking. Katie brings both medical expertise and firsthand experience as an endurance athlete with active dogs. So let's get into it. All right, Katie, I'm so excited for this conversation. This is going to be good. And hopefully we don't offend anyone because I think people can have a lot of opinions about dogs, but we want to come in with hopefully a helping hand for those ultra runners especially. I think there's a lot of questions that they have about having a dog as their training partner. I've been running with my golden since 2009 was the first year I did a race, and it's just, as a woman who goes out running, I always feel a little bit safer with a dog, but also it's just nice to have that training partner that wakes up at 5 a.m. with me and is like, oh, we're putting on our running clothes, yeah, let's go. Like, I'm not leaving your side because I don't want to be left behind. So welcome Katie. I'm so excited to talk with you.
I'm so excited to be here too.
And you come from, I think this is so interesting that you have a lot of experience working with very active dogs in like the sled dog races here in the Duluth area. We have the John Bear Grace. And so that's like a whole nother level of like endurance
athlete. Yeah.
But I think ties in really well with the conversation for runners taking their dogs out with them. So let's get into it, especially, and I want to just kind of kick it off for those that are maybe interested in getting a dog to have as a training partner. I see in a lot of the running Facebook groups, people are asking like, hey, we want to get a dog. What breed do you recommend? And then the comments are just a long list of like all sorts of different suggestions. And I'm not going to get into the debate of whether someone should buy from a reputable breeder or from getting a dog from a shelter. I think both are wonderful options. But what breeds would you recommend, or personality traits like do you find that tend to thrive more in that like running training partner role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for someone who is searching for a dog to kind of be in that role, I especially if that we're more of like not a professional, right? So like our maybe we spend a lot of time being active and doing things like that, but we also spend a lot of time at home and want a home dog. I would probably still prioritize like those other aspects of life. So a breed that fits in there. But when we're talking about being an athlete and wanting a dog that fits that, and will be right, like you said, right there by your side, maybe more excited at 5 a.m. than you are to go out for a run.
Yes.
There's a lot of athletic type breeds that exist. First couple that come to mind are some hunting type breeds. So those dogs that are bred to be athletic. They're bred to run and work almost all day, and they kind of have that innate drive to do so. So thinking like your pointers and some of your labs, your and that we could talk about that too, but golden retrievers like you have and have run with in the past, huskies, and definitely we need to consider climate for them, spaniels, Vizslas, those sorts of more athletic working type dogs. Oh, and you're like herders, so like collies. border collies, Aussies, those sorts of dogs that are just like
Yeah. I
amped
see a
to
lot of
go
people
get
run
it.
with like German shepherds or like those type of like shepherd type. Those work.
And Shepherd
To,
mixes too. Shepherd
yeah.
Husky mixes is a good mix too, because they tend to be pretty athletic and have that innate want to keep
Yeah,
going
and I
around.
feel like if you're going to have those dogs, and especially if you have maybe a smaller yard or a smaller house, like it is really important to get them exercised anyway.
Yeah,
So it makes a nice opportunity to get some energy out of them
yeah,
most days of the week.
absolutely.
If you're going to go to a shelter, definitely talking with the staff. I would imagine like, hey, what's
Yeah.
this dog's personality? Does it have a lot of energy? Does it like to go on walks and runs? Like, and then asking like what breed mixes do you, because a lot of them tend to be more of a mixed breed dog. Like,
Hmm.
if it looks more like a basset hound, like probably not a good option. They tend to not like, don't tend to be the best runners. Though again, maybe someone out there has a basset hound that they love to run with. I certainly have a good friend that I've run with who has this little fluffy butt. I call it fluffy butt, like a Shih Tzu mix, and it goes running like we'll do like 5-6 miles on it in the snow, and it handles it just great. I mean, granted, it's like
Yeah.
a cooler, here winter in Duluth, so it definitely doesn't get overheated. But it's just funny to
Yeah.
me how like some of the even little dogs will do great on some of
Yeah.
those. So like looking from the dog personality, it can vary even in breeds there, I
Yep.
find, for sure.
Yep. That's the number one, is all breeds aside, the individual dog. Like you want a dog that has the that wants to do that with you, wants to be out, and spend a lot of time outside.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so yeah, and any, like you said, if you're going to a shelter and adopting, they're talking to shelter staff. If the dogs are in foster care, that can be really helpful too, because those foster parents, know a lot about the dog's personality and could tell you like, yeah, he would love to do that or she would love to do that. And so first and foremost, a dog that wants to do it. And if you're going to a shelter, that can be kind of hard to suss out at the beginning, which is partially why I say like think about the rest of your life too, because you want a dog that fits well into especially like if you get injured or something like that, you still want a dog that is a wonderful family dog. So,
Hmm.
but when you're taking that into consideration, kind of their conformation can be helpful. So a dog that doesn't have like a really smushed face, or trouble, difficulty that would result in difficulty breathing or heat,
More of those like
difficulty
bulldog
regulating heat.
types where they
Yeah.
don't their breathing is more labored,
Yes.
like, even when they're just laying on the couch,
Yeah.
might not be
Yes.
great for long distance running.
Yeah, and if you, depending on what part of the country you're in, like say if you are in the southern part of the country, and you do a lot of stuff all year round, you might not want a dog that has a thick double layer coat because that would limit what you're able to do during the summer and affect them and their
Hmm.
ability to kind of manage their temperature and stuff while you're
Yeah.
working.
Any recommendations for easing into training if you want to take your dog out for a run? How is there any best practices for like building up their endurance safely?
I think it's very, very similar to us, right? So you want a base build before you're getting into the meat of your training plan, both to prevent injury and to kind of build strength with all your stabilizers and everything like that. It's the same with them. Um, so starting slow and making sure that you're meeting them with where their current fitness level is at. So that can include things like the duration that you're out, the temperature that you're out in, and the difficulty of the terrain that you're in. So starting easy, 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 and kind of building from there.
Hmm.
And it's always nice when you're base building yourself and you're starting with the dog because then you can just do it together and they just kind of follow along with your training plan and build as you go too.
Yeah, and I think also because sometimes I see people out with their dogs and they're struggling to kind of control their dog. Maybe their dog hasn't had a lot of training. And I sometimes call it like, oh, their dog's taking their owner out for a walk versus like you taking your dog out for a walk. And I think that's also a good opportunity to just kind of train your dog in showing them what their job is. Like that's
Yeah.
how I teach for my office dog is Marley. And she's not here today with me because she's very noisy with her tail and throwing tennis balls at me. So she's not in my office currently, but um, I when she was probably like 8, 9 months old, and I started taking her out for just little short jogs, and I was like, okay, here is your job: is to be on my left side. You can be a little bit ahead of me if you want, but you have to stay here. You can't like veer off, or you can't like run into my leg and possibly trip me. It
Yep.
was a lot of like because my previous dog Ellie was like the best runner ever. Like if there's other dogs, she would just like lift her tail up just to alert them and myself that there's another dog, but she always was like, this is my job, is to be in this position, to run with you, to keep pace. And it was
Yep.
just the best. And so when you're having more of a younger dog or teaching them how to do that, it's important to practice that training as you're working up and building up that
Yeah.
stamina for them.
There are a lot of skills for them to learn to both keep you safe, keep them safe, and just to be respectful to every other trail user that you're or people on the sidewalk, what have you. And that is a great time, that base building time, to focus on those skills and really kind of hone that and teach them what they need to know to be successful with
Yeah.
that.
Let's
Hmm.
talk about gear, because you hear
Yeah.
all sorts of recommendations again on the Facebook groups. There's the gentle lead, there's just a flat collar, there's a training collar, there's harnesses. Um, I I do have that Knox gear harness for my dog, like because I'll run early in the morning that lights
Yeah,
up.
it lights up.
I
Love those.
I
Hmm.
love it. I have one. I
Hmm.
have the Knox gear for myself, the vest, but that lights up. But then also one for my dog, and I don't necessarily hook her up to that harness. I usually just she does better with like a flat collar. What are your recommendations typically for like equipment to use to run with your dog?
That's a great question because, like you said, there's endless amount of products out there to utilize, and some of it depends on what your goals are, what terrain you're in, and kind of what you're doing. So there's gear that's designed for pulling sports when you're running with your dog, and then there's gear that's more designed for um, running with your dog, but they're not necessarily pulling you
Yeah,
and participating in that sport. So.
and like the ski
Um,
joring, or like
Right,
which has always
exactly.
been on my list. So like if I could learn to ski,
Yeah.
passenger ski, like I would think that would be so cool to do some ski joring. It looks
Yeah.
amazing. Or like people will do it with bikes too. Like they'll have
Yep.
I've seen videos of like those really intense like German Malloys dogs where they like
Yes.
just are hauling it,
That.
pulling their cyclist. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Like down a single track that I wouldn't even feel comfortable just by myself on a bike. And they're like,
Yeah, super
so
intense. But
yeah, it doesn't have to
if
be that intense, but it
no,
is
but
fun.
it's so cool to watch.
It is.
I would never do it myself, but I'm like, that was amazing. So
It is. And
those
so there's
types of settings, a harness would make a lot of sense.
yes, and those harnesses, they make harnesses specifically for pulling, so um that there's physics involved of like where the tension is going through their body and at what angle the rope is coming in at the dog
Hmm.
based on if you're standing, biking, all those sorts of things. But for your average like endurance athlete who's out running with their dog, usually they're either off leash or tethered to them in some capacity. If you're going to use a harness, I think the two most common are harness or flat leash or combination. And if you're going to use a harness, my recommendation is that we use like a Y-shaped harness so that they have free motion of their shoulders and are able to move freely and comfortably. And those are often padded harnesses as well, so that if they do happen to pull, it's comfortable. I would tend to avoid harnesses that have a front leash clip, partially for safety while you're out doing that sort of thing. If they get caught up or are pulling forward and then they reach resistance, that can like work and pull. And if you're already doing endurance things, we're trying to avoid any injury. um, so a same reason for the halties. Some of them like close the mouth, and we want them to be able to pant
Yeah.
freely. And again, you're caught putting tension on the neck. So if they pull into it and then get kind of torqued, just like with humans, we're trying to maintain our balance with our musculature and everything like that. We don't want to cause pain or discomfort in those areas. So comfortable fitting harness or a neck collar. And the wider collars can distribute any tension a little bit more along the surface area of the neck. So If they do happen to pull, they have a little bit more comfort there, but not 100% necessary. And then,
Sure.
yes, I love the light up stuff for when you're at night, at dusk, so you can see your dog and other people can see your dog.
Yeah, we tend to run on the side of the road in our little small town, and so it's nice to just have as
Yeah,
much light coming from it as
visibility.
possible. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's really comfortable for her because it's set
yeah,
up specifically for to take your dog out and be active. So
yeah,
I'm a big
exactly.
fan of it. I'll include a link in the show notes too for those that are looking to get that. I think it makes a really great Christmas gift for your dog too. So if you get a puppy or a younger dog, is there an age that dogs should safely start running longer distances? I've always heard 12, you have to wait till you're 12 months, but sometimes I've got like an 8, 9, 10-month old puppy that has got a lot of energy, and I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, I gotta like start doing something with this dog.
My general recommendation is waiting to put any serious mileage on them until they are what we consider like skeletally mature. So those growth plates have closed. And that ranges based on their size a lot. So it can be anywhere from like 8 to 9 months upwards to 18 months. So your larger breed dogs tend to have those growth plates closed later, and your smaller dogs, they tend to close a little bit earlier. Up until that point, it's great to get them out and moving. And it's if you're paying attention to their comfort and their energy level, like we don't want them exhausted, so we're not working them to exhaustion. If you're paying attention to those things, doing short little outings where it's really fun, you can get them out and on the trail. That's a good time to start training, like we were talking about, and get them moving through nature. It's good for their growth and development to be active.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't want to tire them out or put them in situations that are super high impact, like leaping off big things or too much jumping and leaping and that sort of thing. So just time in nature really, where they are kind of leading the activity is great when they're young like
Love it.
that. And then once you starting to kind of build mileage and stuff with them when they're around that 9 months to 12 or 18 month time, like we said, just starting to build and build them a base so that they can have fun and be comfortable.
Okay, let's talk about the nutrition because obviously with like adult endurance athlete nutrition, like we've got it, like there's a lot of science backed behind it, like it's very
Hmm.
detailed. With office dog Marley is her name, where I'm always kind of watching her weight. She tends to get a little bit heavier in the winter, so I have to cut down her
Yep.
food. But then if I tend to like start running with her a lot more, then I have to make sure like I'm maintaining weight. So do active dogs tend to need more food or different food compared to less active dogs?
I think if you are really so an endurance athlete, your dog's coming on every run or every bike with you, and they're doing high mileage and burning through calories at a high rate, then yes, a performance food can be really helpful, um, because it's kind of specially formulated for those athletes. So it has a higher protein content and a higher fat content. And our dogs, compared to humans, are much better at utilizing their fat stores for energy. So increasing their fat as part of that can be really helpful for calorie intake and for energy intake. Um, so there are several, probably more than several sporting brands that exist in the world. Um, like I know the popular brands like Purina and Royal Canin, like those Wet Hills, they all have a sport version. But then you have your kind of like smaller brands like Red Paw and Inukshuk that also have really that protein fat ratio that is helpful for them.
Okay.
And those foods tend to be very calorie dense. So in our dog foods, we measure calories in kilocalories, and each bag of food has a different kilocalorie per cup. So your performance food, because they're higher in protein, because they're higher in fat, they have much higher calorie density. So you're looking at somewhere between 550, maybe even upwards of 600 kilocalories per cup, compared to your average maintenance food that has closer to like 350 kilocalories per cup. So when we have an endurance athlete, that can be really helpful. But when you're in the off season, you may want to consider switching them off the endurance food just to help with things like satiety, um, and maintaining their weight. It just makes it a little bit easier. So it's not wrong to kind of switch throughout the year, just like you would adjust your own nutrition for
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, wherever you are in your training and what the season is. So
Yeah. So carbs aren't king with dogs like they are with humans.
they
They're
are
more
not.
of like the protein fat. They're more like the keto athletes per
Yeah.
se.
Yeah, but they can utilize carbs just like we do with, there's kind of some misnomers or miseducation out there about it. They can digest carbs just fine. And it is required for them to, for brain energy and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
they're just way better than we are at utilizing
Yeah.
fat and switching into
Well, I
that.
mean, if you think about it, like they're derived from wolves, like they
Yep.
obviously eat a primarily meat-based diet with,
Hmm.
for like hunting in the woods kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that makes sense, when you think about it that way. Okay, so let's talk about timing. So
Yes.
if like let's say you are someone that runs with your dog in the morning, and do you wait to feed them after your run, or do you feed them before? Like how much time should you, if you're going to feed them before, should you give between meals and exercise? Like what's kind of the recommendations of timing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to say there is a lot of nuance with
Okay, of
this. So it
course.
depends a little bit on what kind of intensity that run is going to be in the morning, and duration. In general, if you're going out for anything other than like a quick jog in the morning, I would recommend they have some calories in their system beforehand. Usually give them at least an hour, upwards of 2 hours between the small meal and when you're doing activity. Biggest concerns and that you'll see and hear from people is the concern for bloat, which is where the stomach gets gas filled and then twists on itself. That could be life threatening. So um, when we feed is always a topic of discussion for athletes. But in general, if you give them an hour to 2 hours after a small meal, you're going to be just fine. Um,
So hold
and
on, does the bloat happen, is it get caused because of the food in their stomach when they're exercising, or because their stomach is empty?
it can happen either.
Oh, okay.
It can happen spontaneously, and it's not always correlated with activity and food intake. Um, but our kind of goal with minimizing the risk of it is having a really large, full stomach, heavy stomach, and then doing activity where they're panting and intaking air. The theory is that that can increase their risk
Got it.
for bloat happening.
Okay.
So you have to try to balance, and it can be difficult, balance their nutrition and calorie intake and also their safety with that sort of risk that exists.
Okay.
And the same thing happen is we think about after activity as well. We want them to be recovered from their activity. We don't want them to be excessively panting. So at least an hour after heavy activity that we're feeding a full meal.
Okay.
They can eat throughout activity. Usually, like a high protein, high fat type foods are great during activity as well. You'll see the sled dogs during their like each run that they do, so each like leg of the race, the mushers will stop and snack them with like literal snacks of fat that are just like frozen fat
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, or things like fish that are really high in fat and that sort of stuff. So they can eat small little things throughout without any real risk, and it can help them with recovery and everything.
So how long would your run have to be in order for you to justify like adding in a little snack?
It's a little bit hard to say, but in general, snacking anywhere upwards of like 5+ miles for a dog.
Okay.
A dog that's in shape and this is your regular, they can do more than that. But I would start considering bringing some sort of snack for them after that. And if they're off leash, the other thing to consider is when they're off leash, if they're not running directly by your side but are free to roam a little bit more, they tend to do almost double the distance of what we're doing.
Absolutely. Yes.
So if you're going out for a 5 mile jog and they are off leash roaming through the fields and stuff, they are probably doing closer to 10. And so then you want to be considering, yeah, their water intake and their food intake during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I always I love taking my dog to the state parks in the winter when the ticks aren't bad because they're horrible in
Yep.
the summer. And she has a lot of hair, so it'd be a nightmare to try and find the ticks. But I will let her off leash because there's not a lot of people out in the winter
Yeah.
on the trails, and she has a very good recall. I will say, like she's got She's kind of a psycho dog a lot at home, but like she got a really good recall. And so, yeah, she runs like up and down those hills like crazy. So she probably
Yep.
gets in for sure at least twice as much mileage.
Yep.
And it's the best, like for me to go out for a 3 mile run and for her to get in a bunch of activity.
Yeah.
And then she's just a little more mellow at home the rest of the day, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Burn some of that off.
Yeah. So for the ultra runners that have a very trained and like fit dog that are doing longer distances, they should probably be bringing some sort of like high performance food with them, is what it's sounding like.
Yep.
And
Either
how?
food or
Yeah.
there's sorry to interrupt, but there's also like treats or like almost like a jerky type
Oh, nice.
chew treat that is made for performance dogs. So if you're looking for something easy, that's a great way. I don't
Okay.
remember the product right off the top of my head.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we
So
can
if
put
you
it in
have like
there.
product or treat recommendations, I
Yeah.
think people are gonna love that. So feel free to like
Yeah.
provide. We'll put it all in the show notes, which will be
Perfect.
great. Okay, and then let's talk about water because it's like you can't force a dog to drink, especially like for my like my runners. I'm like kind of like let's like hydrate yourself before we go out front. But she's saying I can't force them. So, how much water should we typically be bringing on a run or planning like maybe a water crossing of some sort that they
Yep.
could drink from? Like, how do we know if they're getting like enough, or like how should we plan out that hydration strategy for
Yeah.
them?
I tend to plan my runs. I like to include or go on a route if possible that has water along it because then they have the ability to manage their own intake a little bit there,
Mm-hmm.
but also you have opportunities for cooling down, which I think we're going to talk a little
Yeah.
bit about as well. So it just encourages all that sort of situation. In carrying it yourself, so you're going someplace that doesn't have any water, or there's no access at the trailhead or anything like that. Um, bringing Essentially bringing them the same amount of water that you would bring yourself
Nice.
is a good place to start. And then kind of assessing your dog throughout the run and adjusting the next time you go. And that can be a helpful kind of like way to approach it because you're going to bring a different amount of water for yourself based on the weather. So whether it's humid, hot, cold, all that sort of thing. And so that will help you adjust the amount that you're bringing for your dog as well. And always over prepare. That's
Yeah,
my
for
general
sure.
recommendation. Bring more than you think you're going to need, and then kind of assess the next time around with the similar conditions and
Yeah.
adjust.
I love a good water crossing, as long as it's not mud,
Yeah.
because Marley loves the mud. Like she will just full on,
Lay
like
in
she
it.
looks like she's wearing like brown pants because she's got a lot of
Yep.
hair.
Yep.
Is there any risk for overhydrating your dogs? Is that an issue?
Um, the situations where we see like overhydration or water toxicity exist more when a dog is at like the lake and they're like
Got it.
swimming and chasing waves and intaking. So the risk is less when you are out with them and you're kind of offering them water and doing that sort of thing. And again, in general, they won't drink water for hydration to excess. But when we see the water toxicity, it's when they're not drinking. It's when they
Mm,
are intaking water for a different reason.
yeah,
Usually it's behavioral. They're just like so amped to be chasing waves and biting at them and all that sort of thing. So those water toxicity happens more in that sort of situation than it does in like a hydrating
got it.
situation.
Okay.
Same goes as well.
And then what about electrolytes? Is there any like do dogs need like electrolyte supplements like humans do?
They really don't.
Okay.
And the reason is they don't sweat like humans do. So the way that they cool is primarily through evaporative cooling, through their nasal passages and their oral cavity with panting. They don't lose an electrolyte solution like we do, where you have salt and chlorine that are being exuded in your sweat essentially. So they don't have that loss, and so their body is really good at maintaining their sodium.
Great.
So in general, they don't really need a balanced electrolyte solution to rehydrate, and you actually can risk them having hypernatremia or too much sodium if you're doing that regularly.
Okay.
Um, as a recovery, it's okay to like do a little bit of electrolytes in their as part of their kind of like recovery plan, but throughout exercise, they don't really need to replenish like we do.
Okay. Love it. Actually, let's go back. I just thought of this. I forgot to ask
Yeah,
this. You mentioned bloat. Like, is
yeah,
there like classic signs that people should look out for with bloat?
yes. The biggest is you will actually see them become distended.
Oh, okay.
And it's right behind their ribs. If they're a deep chested dog, sometimes their stomach lives like up in their ribs a little bit further, but it's right along their ribs. You'll actually see them become distended. And as that happens, your dog will look visibly uncomfortable. So they will
Hmm.
be panting, they might be wide eyed, they will be standing a little bit hunched. Um, and then that can very rapidly progress to like collapse and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
scary, scary things.
Oh my
um,
God.
but
This
so it's definitely good to know the signs of.
this makes me think of the funniest story. I had one of my first golden, Josie, sweetest dog, but she was like a bit of a garbage hound, or like
Mm.
with she's always hungry kind of dog. And I thought she had like bloat because her stomach was so full and hard. And then I finally figured out she had stuck
Just
downstairs.
eating them.
She had like eaten like a half a bag of cat food. So, and she like handled it like a champ. She just pooped a whole lot for like 2 days.
Yeah,
But like, it's like no other
yeah,
signs of like discomfort other than like her stomach. Why is your stomach so big?
yeah.
It's because
And she was
she ate
probably
like
like, I regret this.
no, she probably thought it was the greatest thing ever, knowing her. But like, oh, that just made me think of that.
We call
Okay,
that food bloat. When
yeah,
they eat so much that they literally
she
look extended
she
from
was yeah she would have some really funny stories of the things that she would do. I'm gonna share one on Instagram after this episode goes live because it is the funniest picture in the world of the things that she did. How do we recommend handling hot weather with our dogs? For me, typically, I just don't even take my dog out. If it's
Yep,
really hot, I will plan a really early morning run if I'm going to run.
yep, I agree with
What?
that.
Yeah.
Avoidance and like avoidance and management are your number one and two ways to manage that. So decreasing the risk overall. And that includes choosing when you go, choosing where you go, and how far you go.
Hmm.
The general rule of thumb is to consider the heat index, which includes humidity as part of that. And I think the base number is like 150. So if your total heat index is 150, that's kind of like where we need to be considering not going if it's above that. And humidity really plays a big role in their ability to regulate heat because they can't sweat like we do. So when they're doing evaporative cooling, humidity in the air directly affects how much they can cool. And when they have a big furry hair coat, it also affects any heat dissipation through their body
I think
naturally.
also their color, like those dogs that are
100%
black, like they get so
bake.
hot
Yep.
so fast. And
Yep.
like with my Goldens, they're a little bit lighter color, so they don't tend. I mean, sometimes they lay out in the
And
on
bake
the
in the cat
black
hair.
top, and they like they just. I'm like, like why they love to lay out in the heat. I don't know why, but those dark colored dogs, they get really hot really fast.
hmm And even in like a cool temperature, when your dog is active and exercising, their body temperature goes up. And it's not unusual to see a body temperature of 104, 105 when they are active and being active outside. Now, we start to worry when those their ability to manage that heat is interrupted with, whether it's their conformation, like their ability to actually physically cool, or the environment and the weather. That number, when they can't manage that anymore, starts to climb and climb and climb. And that's where we get heat exhaustion and heat stroke secondary to that. So avoidance is my number one recommendation is
Yeah.
don't take your dog running at noon in a 90-degree day. Like you will put them at risk for heat
Mhm.
exhaustion.
And especially if
And
the
you will.
humidity is really high. Well, let's talk about signs of like heat stress or heat stroke in dogs,
Yeah.
like, and
hmm
then what we should do if that starts to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So biggest signs that you'll see, kind of the first ones that you'll see is what is the quality of their panting? Are they able to close their mouth and breathe relaxed, or do they have to keep their mouth open and they're excessively panting? What does the shape of their tongue look like? So we call it a spatulate tongue. when their tongue is really wide and flat and they are panting really hard. And that is your first sign that heat exhaustion is coming on. If you see your dog look like that, they may or may not have like a glassy kind of eyed look too, where they're like not really focusing. Maybe they're looking off into the distance, having trouble like listening to you, that sort of thing. We need to cool them immediately. Take a break, end your run, get them cooled. And any way that you can cool them is a good way to cool them. There's a lot of rhetoric around don't, do this type of cooling versus that type of cooling. But when you're in the situation, like just cool them.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to get their body wet. Not with like a towel or something that you're leaving over them, but like a hose, get them in a lake, get them in a river,
Kiddie
saturate
pool,
their,
something.
yeah, exactly. It's a tub, like whatever you need, saturate their hair coat. And then if you have the capacity, like a fan blowing over that is the best way to like get evaporative cooling happening for them. Um, it's not enough to just get their paw pads wet or like put alcohol in their paw pads. You'll see that some places. That's just not enough, and it won't
Okay.
won't do the trick.
Okay.
And then if you're worried, once you do that, take them to the vet so that they can fully assess them for the
Okay.
degree of
Love
heat
it.
stroke. Yeah.
Speaking of paw pads, let's talk
Hmm.
about different surfaces. I
Yeah.
don't know what, like, I've never had issues with my dog's paw pads, even if I go running like on the salted roads in the winter, or
Yeah.
like, I guess I don't run. If I run on like a warmer day where it's really sunny, I typically have them more on like the shoulder where it's not like
Yeah.
the dark pavement. So I haven't typically, but what's your recommendation in terms of like taking care of a dog's paws?
Yeah, I think it comes, and probably the reason you haven't really had much difficulty is if you're starting and building them, like we talked about already, their paw pad toughness will come along with all that,
Sure.
especially if you're running on the trails and stuff. Um, when we can really see changes is like if it's wet conditions and or really, really rocky conditions, their paw pads can get kind of sore and maybe even a little swollen.
Sure.
And I do see frequently dogs have difficulty with the salt on the roads because it can sting and like get in between their paw pads and cause some issues. Um, and then we worry about the snow. If you're doing an athlete who's out in the winter too, snow conditions can really affect their paw pads. So when it's primarily when we have that like freeze where you get this like layer of
Crust,
frozen
the layer of
snow, yep,
crust on top.
and
Yeah.
then they're punching through that. That can really be hard on paw pads and even up on their higher pad that's on the back of their wrist there. And you can see cuts and abrasions from that. And then where we live, when it's like negative whatever,
Yeah.
you can see like paw injury related to cold, like frostbite type injuries.
Yeah.
So managing that is just being really observant of what your dog is doing and where you're going to be, what the terrain is like. There are some products that you can use to like keep them nice and soft and basically help them from getting abraded while they're out and about. So things like Mushroom Secret is like a really common one, and it's kind of like a wax. It helps prevent snowballs in the winter, and then it helps kind of
Hmm.
keep them like conditioned kind of in the other months. And then you can always consider using booties, but booties affect their ability to place their paws normally and can affect their ability to dissipate heat a little bit. So you have to be a little cognizant of that. I wouldn't want to booty a dog in the summer months because it will affect their ability to dissipate heat as
Yeah.
well.
They never stay on anyways.
And they
Like
don't stay on. Yeah,
that's
they're super.
that's
Yeah,
there you're gonna, especially if your dog's like
yeah,
off leash in the trail, you're gonna
yeah,
lose them like immediately.
exactly. Yes. So really like building them up is one big good way, and then keeping them nice and conditioned. And if they do get
Okay.
injured, then letting them heal fully before we
Okay.
are back out on the trail.
Love it. We talked about a lot of things. Is there anything that most dog owners overlook when it comes to running with them?
One thing that I think people should really be like cognizant of is your dog's experience. So like if you and this is a little bit of a personal opinion, but if you are going out for a run and you have no flexibility in your run because of whatever kind of workout you're doing, like this is how it has to be, but you take your dog with you and then they can't for whatever reason they get injured or they seem to be struggling or something and we can't pivot to accommodate them, then we shouldn't bring them for that run. So their experience is just as important as your experience out there. And we want them to have fun and we want them to be safe and we want them to be healthy. And so making sure that you are able in that moment to be able to prioritize them if you need to, I think is really big. And that includes things like weather, all the things we talked about, weather and terrain and their fitness level and everything like that. So
Yeah.
it's great to have them along, but we want them to have fun.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going on a hill repeat workout, I'm not taking my dog. Like,
No.
because I'm just like, I have to focus on not like dying. So I'm not going to like pay attention to my dog
Exactly.
at the same time.
Exactly.
Um, for sure. And I think I would also add like going to like a dog training center, taking your dog, like learning how to like teach your dog all of the basic things, or
Yeah.
some people will send their dogs to a trainer. Like, I think those things go such a long way in just not only your dog enjoying life better because they understand the expectations of their behavior, but also you enjoy your dog more
Yeah.
too. Um,
And
if
those
your
are
dog,
skills,
yeah,
right?
like there's
Those are
skills that you
skills
really
they
have
need
to
to learn.
build.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that, I mean, for me, I'm like, if you're going to take your dog out, especially if they're going to be off leash, you need to have a really solid recall with them.
Yep.
Or if you don't, then you have to keep them on a leash. Like, yes, of
Yep.
course, they're going to have more
Yep.
fun off leash, but you have to keep them safe.
Yep.
And so making sure that you just have a very well trained dog that just makes the experience better for both the dog owner and the dog.
I will echo that. I think, especially, I think for new dog owners who are kind of getting into this realm, knowing what the etiquette is a little bit, can be a little bit confusing. So, like, for basic things, like you don't want your dog approaching people or other dogs, you don't want them chasing wildlife. Like you said, they need to have a really, really good recall. And all of those things help keep them safe on the trail, especially in multi-use trails or busy trails, because not everybody's dog is dog friendly, but they still want to and still deserve to get out with their dog if they're on leash and able to control them and all that sort of stuff. So just having that etiquette in mind while we're out and helping your dog build those skills, because that's your responsibility to do as
Yeah,
a
I even find on the
leader.
trails, I've been keeping Marley on a leash just because if I'm by myself, I'm like, what if I come across a bear? Or
Yeah.
what if I come across like a coyote? Or like, she's not going to run at them likely, but I would rather just keep her close and
Yep.
keep her safe and be in control of the situation.
A
Or
hundred
if
percent.
someone else has a dog that doesn't like other dogs, like, I don't want to
Yeah.
put her in a position of getting hurt. And no retractable leashes, people. Like,
Yeah. Yes.
please don't do that.
Yes.
That's another etiquette thing. Just like, don't do it. Are we missing any others in terms of etiquette?
I think those are some of the main ones. I think the one people don't know as much is your dog should not be able to run up to people and other dogs. And so if they're off leash and you don't have that
Even if your dog's
build,
friendly.
even especially then.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not an
because
excuse.
yeah, because those other dogs may not be, and they may be uncomfortable in the situation. Their people are doing their best to manage their own dog, and then having
Yeah.
a strange dog run up to them can just make things worse. So teaching your dog the skill to reorient to you when they see another person or another dog or wildlife, is a huge,
Yeah.
huge
Like, if you have a beagle and you're there
skill.
off leash and there's a rabbit, like, your dog's
Yeah,
gone. Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not fun to lose your dog.
Well, and
So,
that's another thing too. People forget about, like, we share our natural world, right, with wildlife, and especially like in springtime, there's babies everywhere. Like, we want to keep them safe and decrease our dog's impact on that as well.
yeah. Oh, so funny. Okay. Um, Now, Katie, I think it's so cool that you live and when you say northern Minnesota, you are like north of Grand Marais. Like, you're almost Canadian at this
Yeah,
point.
we're almost to the border.
And you live off the grid, which is
Hmm.
incredible, with your dogs and your husband. You have a YouTube channel, you have Instagram.
Yeah.
So where can people find you and follow along on this really unique life journey that you're living?
We are on YouTube. Our channel is called North Star Off Grid. Um, and then we just recently changed our Instagram handle. So we have North Star Off Grid, and then we have a specific dog Instagram that is North Star Mutt. And we have quite a few dogs, including some huskies. So we do a lot of mushing and pulling sports and all that sort of stuff. So you can find us there.
So cool. I just love it. I went to like the start of the John Bear Race when I was like a kid, and I still remember um,
Yeah.
the excitement of that. I need to bring my kids like at some point.
It's so fun. It really is.
Yeah, it
The
just
dogs are so excited.
it's
They
such a
really
unique
love it.
sport, and like
It
it's
is,
on,
yeah.
there's not like a ton of
Nope.
races. So like if you're close by, like I think it's something really unique to
Yeah.
just go and
Yeah,
watch.
and that the start usually happens like in Duluth, most years, assuming we have snow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That has
which
been the
last
trouble
year
the
was a little
last few
that
years.
has been the trouble, yeah. Which you never would think, but yeah, usually starts in Duluth and then goes all the way up the shore. So there's lots of opportunity for spectating throughout the whole thing. It's really a fun and unique sort of event.
Yeah, one of my science teachers in high school was he did some sled dog racing, and when the Iditarod went on, he had us all like draw names of who like
Yeah,
our
I did
person
that
was.
too.
Did you? And then
Yeah,
my person won. Like my person won. I
nice.
was so excited. Like I thought
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. That I think I got like a candy bar or something for my mushroom
Yeah.
to win. But
The cool thing about the bear grease in particular is it draws a lot of those like Alaskan mushers down too because it's a qualifier for the Iditarod. So it's
mm-hmm.
a race that they can use to kind of get their entry into the Iditarod because it is the longest race in the lower 48, or the bear grease. So
Yeah,
it's a unique one in that
so
regard.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
Katie, thank you so much for your time. I just love this topic that for all the
We could
dog
talk about
lovers
this
out there. I don't think
for
I've ever
days.
seen a podcast episode on this topic of like how to care for your dog as an endurance
Yeah.
athlete training partner. So I'm just really excited that we got to share your wisdom because it's definitely not my area of expertise because I stick with just the humans, the people. So we appreciate you sharing everything that you know.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love the podcast, so happy to
Oh,
be on.
thanks. Huge thanks to Katie for sharing her time and expertise. This was definitely a more unique episode, so please let me know what you think. Your feedback is always welcome and appreciated because this program is 100% all about you and helping bring you the answers from credible resources. As always, make sure you've tapped that follow button and leave a review. Your support truly means the world to me. So feel smart, train strong, my friend. I will see you in the next episode.